plant-based diet is thought to have played a significant role in human evolution, and the consumption of whole plant foods and even just extracts has repeatedly been associated with decreased risk of aging-related diseases. And by healthy aging, I'm not talking preventing wrinkles. What about protecting our brain? Two of the most dreaded consequences of dementia with aging, problems moving around, and difficulty remembering things. Dementia robs older adults of their independence, control, identity. What can we do about it? Well, fruits and vegetables help reduce the risk of other chronic diseases. Might they work for brain diseases as well? There's been a proliferation of recent interest in plant polyphenols as agents in the treatment of dementia. There are 4,000 different kinds found ubiquitously in foods of plant origin, but berries are packed with them, possessing powerful antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. And there's a subset of a subset called anthocyanidins, natural blue-purple pigments, uniquely and specifically capable of both crossing the blood-brain barrier and localizing inside brain regions involved in learning and memory. And that's where we need it. The brain takes up less than 2% of the body weight, but may burn up to 50% of the body's fuel, creating a potential firestorm of free radicals. So maybe these brain-seeking phytonutrients in berries could fight oxidation, inflammation, and increase blood flow. So this raised a thought-provoking idea. Maybe a nutritional intervention with blueberries may be beneficial in forestalling or even reversing the neurological changes associated with aging. So did researchers give blueberries to people and see what happened? No, as I noted in an earlier video, they gave blueberries to rats. It would be a decade before the first human trial, but it worked. Blueberry supplementation improves memory in older adults, suggesting that consistent supplementation with blueberries may offer an approach to forestall or mitigate brain degeneration with age. What other blue-purple foods can we try? Concord grape juice had a similar benefit, improving verbal learning, suggesting that supplementation with purple grape juice may enhance cognitive function in older adults with early memory decline. Why use juice and not whole Concord grapes? Because then you couldn't design a placebo that looked and tasted exactly the same to rule out the very real and powerful placebo effect. And also because it was funded by the Welch's Grape Juice Company. This effect was confirmed, though, in a follow-up study showing for the first time an increase in neural activation in parts of our brain associated with memory using functional MRI scans. But this brain scan study was tiny, just 4 people in each group, and same problem with the blueberry study. It just had 9 people in it. Why haven't large population-based studies been done? Because we haven't had good databases on where these phytonutrients are found. We know how much vitamin C is in a blueberry, but not how much cyanidin, until now. The Harvard Nurses' Health Study followed the cognitive function of more than 16,000 women for years and found that higher long-term consumption of berries was associated with significantly slower rates of cognitive decline in this cohort of older women, even after careful consideration of confounding by socioeconomic status, meaning even after taking into account the fact that rich people eat more berries. The first population-based evidence that greater intakes of blueberries and strawberries were highly associated with slower rates of cognitive decline, and not just by a little bit. The magnitude of associations were equivalent to the cognitive difference that one might observe in women up to 2.5 years apart in age. In other words, women with higher intake of berries appeared to have delayed cognitive aging by as much as 2.5 years. Why not just take some kind of anthocyanidin supplement? Because there hasn't been a single study that found any kind of cognitive benefit just giving these single phytonutrients. In fact, the opposite. Whole blueberries appear to be more effective than individual components, showing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. These findings potentially have substantial public health implications, as increasing berry intake represents a fairly simple dietary modification to test in older adults for maintaining brain function. An evidence-based systematic review of acai berries was recently published by the National Standards Research Collaboration, an impartial scientific body that refuses to take support from product manufacturers, cited by the World Health Organization as one of the most authoritative sources on such matters. What did they find? Whenever a new purported superfood hits the market, the first thing researchers tend to do is look at its chemistry, such as antioxidant capacity, which was done back in 2006. Based on one measure, it had the highest antioxidant capacity of any food reported to date, a remarkable finding I reported at the time, arguing that despite its cost, frozen acai pulp represented one of the best antioxidant bangs for one's buck. But still, we didn't know what it did outside of a test tube. The next step is to go from test tube to petri dish and try it out on some human cells. They dripped the concentration of acai berry phytonutrients one would expect in one's bloodstream after eating them on some blood cancer cells taken from a woman with leukemia, and saw a dramatic rise in cancer cell mortality. In fact, about twice what was found previously using similar concentrations of hibiscus tea on the same cancer. Acai was also found to boost immune cell function at extremely low doses. Here are some videos of white blood cells gobbling up invading yeast. Nom 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 nom. Come back here. Isn't that amazing? They're like sucking them up like Slurpees. I could watch these all day. Anyway, sprinkle some acai berry powder on them, and they gobble more. With no acai for breakfast, white blood cells were able to engulf about 140 yeast, but in the presence of a tiny amount of berry powder, they engulfed closer to 200. Slowly but surely, researchers began piecing together the mechanism by which acai affected cellular function. Still no human studies, though. Researchers moved from cells to animal models. Who could forget the addition of acai to cigarettes has a protective effect against emphysema in mice. Instead of adding berries to their cigarettes, though, it might be easier to just encourage the mice to quit smoking. But then finally, starting in 2011, studies on actual people. Pain reduction and improvement in range of motion after daily consumption of an acai in about a dozen folks with painful conditions like osteoarthritis. After 3 months, antioxidant levels went up, and pain levels went down. Though, since there was no blinded control group drinking like some artificially acai-flavored Kool-Aid, the placebo effect could not be excluded. And finally, one last pilot study, the effects of acai on metabolic parameters. 10 overweight folks were given 2 packs of frozen acai pulp every day for a month, and even though they were allowed to take it with sugar, their fasting blood sugars dropped, as did their insulin levels and cholesterol, and it significantly blunted the sugar spike caused by a standardized meal, all without any observed adverse effects. In fact, the only theoretical concern cited in the new review may be that it might work too well. If you're on diabetic blood sugar-lowering medications, it could potentially drop your blood sugar too low, or if you have an autoimmune disease or on immunosuppressants, it could stimulate your immune system too much. But what about the case report of the guy whose muscles started dissolving after using this acai berry supplement? Turns out there was no acai berry in it at all. That's the problem with taking supplements. They're so poorly regulated, you never know what you're getting. For example, a study was done on 27 supplements of another purported superfruit, pomegranate. Here's the main ingredients. OK, except of the 27 supplements tested, only 5 appeared to be actually what they said. Fine, you say, no pills, you'll just stick to the juice. 45 commercial pomegranate juice samples from 23 different manufacturers in the United States. They all said they contained 100% pomegranate juice on the label, but most of them lied. Only 6 out of 23 were what they said they were. The only source you can be guaranteed to get authentic pomegranate juice has no label at all. The Global Burden of Disease study, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is the most comprehensive and systematic analysis of the causes of death undertaken ever, involving nearly 500 researchers from more than 300 institutions in 50 countries, starting out with almost 100,000 data sources. What did they find? Here in the US, they determined our #1 killer was our diet. #1 on their list of the most important dietary risks, not eating enough fruit, responsible for millions of deaths a year around the world. The Union of Concerned Scientists laid it out. A set of dangerous, often lethal illnesses continue to wreak havoc in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of Americans laid to waste, yet there's a straightforward way to reduce the rates of these eminently preventable disorders, including stroke and heart disease. One antidote for individuals is easy, painless, even pleasurable: exploit the protective benefits of fruits and vegetables. If Americans increase their consumption of fruits and vegetables just to meet the dietary recommendations, that alone could save the lives of over 100,000 people every year in the United States. That's if we just reach the minimum. But how? Well, one way may be because of their anti-platelet effects. Platelets are what triggers the blood clots that cause heart attacks and most strokes, but beyond their obvious function in blood clotting, platelets are now considered to play a pivotal inflammatory role in the hardening of our arteries in the first place, as well as allergies, rheumatoid arthritis, and even cancer. Now, it's important to realize that normally, under healthy conditions, platelets circulate in a quiescent, dormant, inactive state, but once they become activated, they can emerge as culprits in inflammation. Platelets transport a vast amount of inflammatory chemicals. Upon activation, they release these chemicals, which can recruit the inflammatory cells that form the pus pockets within our arterial walls that can burst and kill us. This involvement of platelet activation in atherosclerosis development is well established. We've long recognized the platelets' role in the final stages. However, a growing body of data indicates that platelets may also play an important role in the initiation and propagation of atherosclerosis in the first place, which is our nation's leading killer. So, how can we prevent the excessive activation of platelets? Well, it's generally recognized that platelet hyperreactivity is associated with high levels of cholesterol circulating in our blood, so we can cut down on foods that have trans fats, saturated fats, and dietary cholesterol. And we can eat more fruits and vegetables. For example, different varieties of strawberries have shown a significant antiplatelet effect in a petri dish and in people. Here's how they figured it out. This is a platelet in a resting state, packed with little round granule grenades of inflammatory chemicals, which fuse together when the platelet gets activated and the delivery system dilates before it releases its payload. Because resting and activated platelets look so different, you can just take blood from people and count how many are resting and how many are activated. Before and after, people eat more than a pint of strawberries every day for a month, and there's a small but significant drop in the percentage of activated platelets circulating throughout their bodies after the strawberries. Other berries had a similar effect, and at a more modest 2 servings a day. Drinking orange or grapefruit juice did not seem to help, but purple grape juice did successfully reduce platelet activity on the same order that aspirin does. Studies have shown a daily aspirin can reduce heart attacks and strokes. However, aspirin can also cause severe gastrointestinal disturbances and bleeding problems, so should not be used for primary prevention of heart attacks and stroke, as the benefits don't clearly outweigh the serious risks. So it's nice to have a safe, side-effect-free alternative.